against all forms of clergy abuse committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers, both sexual abuse and non-sexual abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, abuse of power, etc., etc. The Montreal Unitarians have repeatedly called in highly misleading or outright false reports to the SPVM to try and shut down my protest. And they've been somewhat successful in obtaining a restraining order against me for 1 year on the basis of what I have reasonable grounds to believe is a combination of paranoid fantasies and perjurious lies. So yes, they were successful in shutting down my protest for 1 full year, and they were clearly trying to get it shut down more permanently. They believed that if they got this 1 year restraining order that they could extend it indefinitely. So it was clearly an attempt to permanently shut down my protest. Well, it didn't quite work out how they wanted. So here we are. And I would say today's protest has been one of the most successful so far, if only because a representative of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, or at least a member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal who was on the Unitarian Church of Montreal's Justice Committee, came out and had some dialogue with me. Wow, 20 years into my protest against Unitarian Universalist anti-religious intolerance and bigotry and related clergy abuse and so on, and then non-related clergy abuse, the sexual abuse. I'm not a victim myself of sexual abuse by a Unitarian Universalist minister, but as a result of sharing my concerns about the non-sexual clergy abuse of Reverend Ray Drennan, his verbal and psychological abuse, his abuse of power and so on, I became aware of such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers. If I can quote two choice phrases from the two cease and desist demand letters that the Unitarian Universalist Association's Canadian attorney, Maitre Marc-André Coulombe, had me served with in June of 2012, if I'm not mistaken. When I became aware of Unitarian Universalists, and more particularly the Unitarian Universalist Association, failing miserably to respond in responsibility to clergy sexual misconduct complaints, and basically, brushing off numerous complaints about clergy sexual misconduct and essentially protecting the vast majority of the ministers involved from any kind of real justice and accountability and so on, I added that to my protest. I mean, I wasn't a victim myself of sexual abuse on the part of a Unitarian Universalist minister, but becoming aware of this and also seeing that very few people were speaking out against it, I thought, well, I can add that to the list of things I'm protesting against, either outside the Unitarian Church of Montreal or other, physical buildings and so on, or on my blog, on the Emerson Avenger blog, and now on Twitter, of course, as well. So I just added that injustice to the list of injustices and abuses and hypocrisy that I'm exposing and have been exposing for well over 20 years. My peaceful public protest started 20 years ago, but my letter writing and so on began a couple of years at least before that. So in real terms, I've been protesting against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse of one kind or another since, let's see now, the peaceful public protest began in May of 1998, and the complaint about Ray Drennan came after he attacked me in 1994, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so I filed a complaint against Reverend Ray Drennan, if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure I do, in February of 1995. Some months after he verbally attacked me in a meeting I had with him, in which he labeled my claimed religious experience as your psychotic experience and angrily insisted I seek psychiatric treatment, in which he labeled Creation Day, an inter-religious celebration of creation, as your cult. And when I asked him, to explain what he meant by the word your cult, because it can have a innocuous definition, he came back with, I mean, a manipulative and secretive religious group. along the lines of the Solar Temple and so on and so forth. Come to think of it, in many ways, the Unitarian Universalist religious community can be quite manipulative and secretive, at least when it comes to their clergy sex abuse problem. Does that make Unitarian Universalism a cult? Good question. Let's try and figure that one out. But if, according to Reverend Ray Drennan, a cult is a manipulative and secretive religious group, and that's it, and that's all, and that's the only definition of cult, well, I hate to have to inform Reverend Ray Drennan that, well, guess what, Ray? A, the Unitarian Church of Montreal is in many ways a manipulative and secretive religious group, and B, the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston is a manipulative and secretive religious community, at least when it comes to clergy abuse problems. So thanks for inadvertently describing the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the Unitarian Universalist religious community as a cult, Ray. According to your definition, they're cults. So enjoy that one, Mr. Reverend Ray Drennan. Say nothing of everyone else who's falsely and maliciously labeled Creation Day as a cult, because it wasn't just Reverend Ray Drennan, there were some others. Yes, Reverend Ray Drennan was certainly manipulative in his efforts to try and, shut down my activities at the church, but then also to shut down my protest outside the church. So definitely manipulative, definitely secretive, definitely trying to shut down this protest, keep it hidden. They've done that many times, so just on that point alone, it's a manipulative and secretive religious group, as is the Unitarian Universalist Association. Doesn't get much more manipulative and secretive than falsely accusing someone of the criminal act of blasphemous libel, a clergy sex abuse cover-up and denial legal bullying, which seeks to conceal such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, such as Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell, to name but one of them. So yes, definitely a manipulative and secretive religious group can be used to describe the Unitarian Universalist Association and also the Unitarian Church of Montreal and, the Unitarian Universalist religious community more generally. Lots of manipulation, lots of secrecy. So yes, I guess according to Reverend Ray Drennan's definition of a cult, Unitarian Universalism is a cult. Oh dear. It's funny how words come back to haunt you. So anyhow, I think we're almost done here. And we've had a very good little protest today. And we got a few minutes left on the recording time here. So, but yeah, I think we're just going to wrap it up. I've had a truly excellent Sunday today, and there are some hopes of resolving this after so many years, because somebody from the Unitarian Church of Montreal's Justice Committee finally had the good sense to engage in dialogue with me. She came out, she was looking at the picket sign, she was taking notes about what they say. No doubt, in terms of discussion within the church and so on, and possibly further police action against my protest. But then we had a little discussion, and I made it very clear to her that I've repeatedly offered dialogue in the past, but it's always been rejected by the church. And I made it clear to her that I'm open to more dialogue. However, I also made it clear to her that I'm not all that inclined to suspend my protest. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, we're so close to celebrating 2 decades worth of peaceful public protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal that I'm not all that inclined to end it now. The only way I'll end it on any kind of permanent basis is if the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the Unitarian Universalist Association actually practice justice, equity, and compassion in their human relations with me, and there's quite a lot of work to do there. And yes, they have to also practice justice, equity, and compassion in relations with the numerous victims of both sexual and non-sexual clergy misconduct that they have never provided any kind of justice to. In fact, UUA moderator Jim Key brazenly lied about sexual abuse of children in what was supposed to be a Unitarian Universalist Association apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct in 2014, which wasn't so long ago. Outright lied about such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers. UA moderator Jim Key, in his what I consider to be utterly worthless official apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct, said the following words, somewhere in the middle of it. No children or elders were abused in my investigations. I think that's an exact quote. It might be a little off, but it's essentially what he said. So one more time. No children or elders were abused in my investigations. So what's he saying? He's saying he investigated Unitarian Universalist clergy sexual abuse and found no evidence of sexual abuse of children by Unitarian Universalist ministers. Well, I hate to have to inform Jim Key, who might be able to hear this in the spirit world because he left the immortal plane a little while ago. Dear Jim Key, recently deceased moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association, I would like to inform you, Jim. Oh wait, I already have. I forgot. In fact, I informed you well before your worthless apology. But Jim, listen to this, Jim, if you can hear me. And everyone else can listen too. Helpless children have been raped by Unitarian Universalist ministers, Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell being just one of them. Oh, and Sunday school teachers. Did I forget to mention Sunday school teachers, such as Stephen Craig Bullite, who was charged, tried, and convicted of the rape of a teenage boy who he adopted? But the Gazette's retired so-called justice reporter, Sue Montgomery, never reported the Unitarian Universalist Association's immoral, unethical, borderline criminal, and if you don't mind my saying so, bat, shit, crazy attempted misuse of Canada's blasphemy law and clergy abuse cover-up. Oh wait, let's throw sex in there, because not all clergy abuse is sexual abuse. So in clergy sex abuse cover-up, legal bullying. Yeah, entirely truthful statement here on my picket sign. Oh, and did I forget to mention that Sue Montgomery, Montreal Unitarian, or former Montreal Unitarian, wants to be the mayor of the Montreal borough of Côte-des-Neiges and Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. Did I forget to mention that? The Gazette's retired, in quotation marks,